help me reach 1,000 subscribers. Please like the video and share your thoughts on the video. Your feedback helps make the contents better. Now let's get to the story.
The courtroom felt like it was closing in on me. I sat there, hands folded on the table, watching Sarah's lawyer shuffle through a stack of papers with that smug smile plastered across his face. My soon-to-be ex-wife sat beside him, her arms crossed, that familiar look of triumph in her eyes. The same look she'd given me the day she told me she wanted a divorce. The same look she'd worn when she said I'd be paying for those 3 kids until I was old and gray. "Mr. Harrison," the judge said, peering over his reading glasses, "we're ready to proceed with the final settlement." I nodded slowly, my fingers brushing against the envelope in my jacket pocket. 15 years. 15 years of marriage, and it had come down to this moment. Sarah's lawyer slid the papers across the table toward me, and I could see her leaning forward slightly, anticipating my signature, anticipating her victory. "Before I sign, Your Honor," I said, quietly, pulling out the envelope, "I'd like to submit some evidence." The color drained from Sarah's face so fast I thought she might faint right there. "My name is Marcus Harrison. I'm 42 years old, and until 6 months ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. I worked as an electrical engineer at a manufacturing plant just outside Columbus, Ohio. The job wasn't glamorous, but it paid well enough to keep our family comfortable. Sarah was a stay-at-home mom to our 3 kids, or at least that's what I believed. Emma was 14, Jake was 11, and little Sophie had just turned 7. I met Sarah when we were both in our mid-20s at a friend's barbecue. She was beautiful, funny, and had this way of making me feel like I was the only person in the room. We got married within a year, and Emma came along shortly after. Life moved fast after that. Diapers, parent-teacher conferences, Little League games, dance recitals, the usual stuff that fills up a life and makes you forget to look too closely at the details. If you're listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserve to be heard. Help me show her that these stories matter. Looking back now, I can pinpoint exactly when things started to change. It was about 3 years ago when Sarah suddenly became obsessed with her appearance. She joined a gym, started buying expensive clothes, got her hair done every week. At first, I thought it was great. Maybe she was just trying to feel good about herself again after years of being focused on the kids. I encouraged it, even paid for a personal trainer she said she wanted. But then came the late nights. She'd tell me she was meeting her girlfriends for drinks or going to some fitness class that ran until 10 at night. Her phone became like a third hand, always with her, always face down on the table. When I'd walk into a room, she'd quickly close whatever she was looking at on the screen. The warmth between us turned cold. We stopped talking about anything that mattered. We became roommates who occasionally argued about whose turn it was to take out the trash. I tried to ignore the signs. I told myself I was being paranoid, that marriage just gets like this after 15 years. Everyone says the spark fades, right? You just have to work through it. So I worked. I picked up extra shifts, brought home flowers, planned date nights that she always seemed too tired to go on. I kept thinking if I just tried harder, things would get better. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a regular Tuesday morning in March. I'd taken the day off because I had a dental appointment. Sarah thought I'd be gone all morning, but the dentist had a cancellation before me, so I finished up early. I came home around 10:30, thinking maybe we could grab lunch together. I walked into our house and heard sounds coming from upstairs. At first, I thought maybe she was watching TV in our bedroom, but as I climbed the stairs, my heart started pounding. Those weren't TV sounds. I knew what I was about to find, but my brain refused to accept it until I pushed open our bedroom door. There she was, my wife of 15 years, in our bed with a man I'd never seen before. The world stopped. Everything went silent except for the ringing in my ears. Sarah screamed and grabbed the sheets. The guy, some muscular idiot with too much hair gel, scrambled for his clothes. I just stood there, frozen, watching my entire life crumble in front of me. "Marcus," Sarah stammered, her face flushed. "I can explain." But I didn't want to hear it. I turned around and walked out of that house. I got in my car and just drove. I drove for hours, not knowing where I was going, not caring. When I finally stopped, I was sitting in a parking lot outside a grocery store 3 towns over, and the sun was setting. My phone had 17 missed calls from Sarah. That night, I checked into a motel. I couldn't go back there, not yet. I sat on that scratchy motel bedspread and tried to figure out what to do. My first instinct was to call a lawyer, to burn everything down. But then I thought about the kids. Emma, Jake, Sophie. They didn't deserve to have their world torn apart because their mother was a cheater. I went home the next day. Sarah was waiting for me, tears streaming down her face, apologizing over and over. She said it was a mistake, that it only happened once, that she'd end it immediately. She begged me to think about the kids, to give her another chance. Against my better judgment, I stayed. Not because I believed her, but because I wasn't ready to blow up my family. I told her we'd try counseling. She agreed immediately, still playing the role of the remorseful wife. We went to 3 sessions before she started making excuses about why she couldn't make it. Too busy with the kids, not feeling well, had an appointment she forgot about. Meanwhile, I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed her phone habits, her schedule, the way she'd suddenly need to run errands at odd times. I wasn't stupid anymore. I knew the affair hadn't ended. She'd just gotten better at hiding it. That's when I made a decision. If this marriage was going to end, and I knew it would, I wasn't going down without protecting myself. I couldn't confront her yet because I needed to be smart about this. Sarah was already talking to some of her divorced friends, and I'd overhear phone conversations about how much they got in their settlements. I knew what was coming. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I hired a private investigator. His name was Raymond, a retired cop in his 60s who ran a small PI firm downtown. I met him at a coffee shop and laid out everything. He listened without judgment, taking notes on a small pad. When he finished, he looked at me and said, "Son, if half of what you're telling me is true, we're gonna find it. But you need to be prepared for what we might uncover. It's usually worse than people think." He was right. Over the next 2 months, Raymond followed Sarah. He documented everything: photos, videos, license plate numbers, addresses. The affair hadn't just continued, it had expanded. The guy from that day in our bedroom? Just one of several. Sarah had been living a completely different life, and I'd been too blind to see it. But Raymond found something else, something that made my blood run cold. He asked me one day, "Marcus, when were your kids born? Give me the exact dates." I rattled them off, wondering why it mattered. He was quiet for a moment, then said, "I need you to think carefully about the timeline of your relationship with Sarah. Were there any periods where you two were apart? Any business trips, separations, anything like that?" My mind raced back. With Emma, no, we'd been together the whole time. But with Jake, I remembered now. I'd been sent to a training program in Chicago for 6 weeks, right around the time Sarah would have gotten pregnant. We'd talked on the phone every night, and she'd flown out to visit me one weekend. But still, 6 weeks. And Sophie was born after a particularly rough patch in our marriage. We'd barely been intimate for months, and then suddenly Sarah was pregnant. She said it had happened during a weekend trip we'd taken to try to reconnect. I'd believed her. "I think you need to get paternity tests done," Raymond said gently. "I can't tell you what to do, but if I were in your position, I'd want to know." The suggestion felt like another betrayal. Those were my kids. I'd raised them, loved them, been there for every milestone. But doubt, once planted, grows like a weed. I couldn't ignore it. I managed to get DNA samples from all 3 kids without them knowing. A strand of hair here, a used cup there. I sent them to a lab along with my own sample, and waited. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. The results came back on a Thursday. I was sitting in my car in the parking lot at work when I opened the email. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely read the screen. Emma, 99.9% probability of paternity. She was mine. Jake, 0% probability of paternity. Not mine. Sophie, 0% probability of paternity. Not mine. I sat there in that car and cried. Not just for the betrayal, but for those kids. Because no matter what that paper said, I loved them. I'd been their father for their entire lives. And now I had to figure out what to do with this information. That night, I confronted Sarah. I walked into our living room where she was watching some reality show, and I threw the papers on the coffee table in front of her. "What's this?" she asked, picking them up. "Read it." I watched her face as she scanned the document, the confusion, then the realization, then the panic. She looked up at me, and for the first time in months, I saw real fear in her eyes. "Marcus, Don't." I cut her off. "Don't you dare try to explain this away. 2 of those kids aren't mine, Sarah. 2 of them. And you let me believe they were for all these years." She started crying, but I felt nothing. No sympathy, no anger, just emptiness. "It was complicated," she sobbed. "I made mistakes, but I love you. I love our family." "Our family?" I laughed bitterly. "This isn't a family. This is a lie built on top of more lies. How many men, Sarah? How many?" She didn't answer. She just sat there crying, and I realized I didn't care anymore. Whatever love I'd had for this woman had died the moment I read those test results. "I want a divorce," I said calmly, "and you're going to give me one." Her tears stopped almost immediately. The mask slipped, and I saw the real Sarah underneath. "Fine," she said coldly, "but you're going to pay. Child support for 3 kids, alimony, half of everything you own. You think you can just walk away from this? I'll take you for everything you've got." And that's exactly what she tried to do. She hired the most aggressive divorce lawyer in the county, some shark named Peterson who had a reputation for destroying husbands in divorce court. They came at me hard, demanding I pay child support for all 3 children, even though 2 of them weren't biologically mine. In Ohio, if you're married to the mother when the child is born and you act as the father, you're legally responsible, regardless of biology. Sarah knew this, her lawyer knew this, and they were going to use it to bleed me dry. The demands were insane. $3,000 a month in child support, $2,000 in alimony, plus she wanted the house, the cars, and half my retirement. By their math, I'd be working until I died just to keep up with the payments. But I had Raymond's evidence. I had photos, videos, financial records showing Sarah had been spending our money on her affairs. Hotel rooms, dinners, gifts for her boyfriends, all paid for with our joint credit cards. I had phone records showing thousands of texts and calls to multiple men. I had everything. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Kowalski, looked at the evidence and smiled. "This is good, Marcus, really good. But we need to be strategic about how we use it. If we show our hand too early, they'll adjust their strategy. We need to wait for the right moment." So we played along. We went through the motions of negotiation, pretending we were going to settle. Sarah grew more confident with each passing week. She started telling people she was going to take me to the cleaners. She'd already picked out a new apartment she was going to rent with my money. She was planning her new life while trying to destroy mine. Make sure you're subscribed because the next part of this story is going to show you exactly how karma works. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens when the truth finally comes out in that courtroom. The settlement conference was scheduled for early June. Sarah showed up in an expensive new dress, her hair freshly done, looking like she was going to a party instead of a divorce proceeding. She barely looked at me as she sat down with her lawyer, that smug confidence radiating off her like cheap perfume. The judge, a stern-looking woman named Judge Patricia Chen, reviewed the proposed settlement. Sarah's lawyer laid it all out, painting me as an absent father and neglectful husband who was trying to abandon his responsibilities. He talked about how Sarah had sacrificed her career to raise our children, how she deserved to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. It was all lies, but he sold it well. I could see the judge taking notes, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Harrison," Judge Chen said, looking at me over her glasses, "do you have any objections to these terms?" This was it, the moment Jennifer and I had been waiting for. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the envelope. It was thick, stuffed with printouts of every piece of evidence Raymond had collected. Photos, financial records, the paternity tests, everything. Before I respond, Your Honor, I'd like to submit some evidence that I believe is relevant to these proceedings. I watched Sarah's face. The confidence drained away instantly, replaced with pure terror. She knew exactly what was in that envelope. "What is this?" her lawyer demanded, but his voice had lost its edge. I opened the envelope and handed it to the judge. Jennifer had organized everything perfectly, with tabs and summaries making it easy to navigate. Judge Chen began reading, her eyes widening slightly as she flipped through page after page. The silence in that courtroom was deafening. I could hear Sarah's breathing getting faster, more panicked. Her lawyer was trying to read over the judge's shoulder, his face growing redder with each second. Finally, Judge Chen looked up. She stared at Sarah for a long moment, then at her lawyer, then at me. When she spoke, her voice was ice cold. "Counselor, did you know about any of this before you filed these motions?"
Peterson stammered, "Your Honor, my client never disclosed." "I'm going to stop you right there," Judge Chen cut him off. She held up the paternity test results. "Your client has been attempting to secure child support for 2 children that aren't biologically Mr. Harrison's, children that appear to be the result of extramarital affairs that she conducted throughout this marriage, affairs that she funded using marital assets." Sarah tried to speak, but the judge raised her hand. "Mrs. Harrison, I suggest you remain quiet. You're already in enough trouble." Judge Chen continued flipping through the evidence, her expression growing darker. "I have financial records here showing over $40,000 spent on hotel rooms, dinners, and gifts that clearly weren't for family purposes. I have surveillance photos documenting multiple affairs over a span of at least 3 years, and most significantly, I have DNA evidence that proves 2 of the 3 children in this marriage are not Mr. Harrison's biological offspring." The judge set the papers down and looked directly at Sarah. "In my 20 years on the bench, I've seen a lot of things, but this is particularly egregious. You came into my courtroom demanding that this man financially support children that you knew weren't his, all while you were the one who destroyed this marriage through repeated infidelity." Sarah was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body, but they weren't tears of remorse. They were tears of someone who just realized they'd lost everything. "Here's what's going to happen," Judge Chen said, her voice firm. "Mr. Harrison, under Ohio law, you are still financially responsible for Jake and Sophie until we can locate their biological fathers and establish paternity with them. However, that responsibility will be significantly reduced. You will pay $500 per month total for both children until their biological fathers can be identified and held accountable." "Your Honor, that's not—" Peterson started, but the judge silenced him with a look. "I'm not finished. Mrs. Harrison, you will receive no alimony. Given that your infidelity and misuse of marital funds directly caused this divorce, I see no reason why Mr. Harrison should continue to support you financially. As for the division of assets, Mr. Harrison will keep the house, his retirement accounts, and his vehicle. You will be responsible for paying back the $40,000 you spent on your affairs from your share of any remaining marital assets." Sarah's lawyer looked like he wanted to crawl under the table. Sarah herself had gone completely pale, her earlier confidence shattered into a million pieces. But Judge Chen wasn't done. "Furthermore, I'm ordering a full investigation into the paternity of Jake and Sophie. Mrs. Harrison, you will provide the names of all individuals you had affairs with during your marriage. We will establish who the biological fathers are, and they will assume financial responsibility for their children. If you refuse to cooperate, I'll hold you in contempt." "Your Honor, please," Sarah finally spoke, her voice cracking. "Those children think Marcus is their father. This will destroy them." For the first time since this all started, I felt a flash of the old anger. I stood up, my hands gripping the edge of the table. "You should have thought about that before you slept with half the county, Sarah. You destroyed our family, not me. You did this." Judge Chen nodded. "Mr. Harrison is right. You made these choices, Mrs. Harrison. Now you have to live with the consequences. This court is adjourned. I'll expect those names on my desk within 2 weeks, or you'll be facing contempt charges." As we left the courtroom, I could hear Sarah sobbing behind me. Her lawyer was trying to calm her down, probably already calculating how much this disaster was going to cost his reputation. I didn't care. I walked out of that courthouse feeling lighter than I had in years. Jennifer walked beside me, a satisfied smile on her face. "That went better than I expected," she said. "Judge Chen doesn't mess around." "What happens now?" I asked. "Now? Now you rebuild your life. The divorce will be finalized in about 30 days. You'll have minimal financial obligations, you keep your assets, and Sarah has to face the consequences of her actions. As for the kids," she paused, her expression softening, "that's going to be the hard part." She was right. Telling Emma was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. She was old enough to understand what had happened and old enough to be devastated by it. We sat in the living room of the house that was now just mine, and I explained everything as gently as I could. "So Jake and Sophie aren't really my brother and sister?" she asked, tears streaming down her face. "They're still your siblings," I said, pulling her into a hug. "Biology doesn't change the fact that you grew up together, that you love each other. But yes, technically, we have different fathers. Does this mean you're leaving us?" My heart broke. "Em, I'm never leaving you. You're my daughter, and I love you more than anything in this world. As for Jake and Sophie, that's complicated. I love them too, but I can't keep pretending to be their father when I'm not. They deserve to know the truth, and they deserve to have their real fathers in their lives."
Over the next few weeks, the truth came out. Sarah, facing contempt charges, finally provided the names. Jake's father was some guy named Derek she'd met at her gym. He was married, with 2 kids of his own, and wanted nothing to do with Jake when he found out. The court didn't care what he wanted. They established paternity and made him start paying child support. Sophie's father was worse. He was some bartender Sarah had been seeing on and off for years. He actually tried to deny it until the DNA test proved otherwise. Now he's on the hook for child support too, though he's never once tried to meet Sophie. Sarah had to move into a small 2-bedroom apartment on the other side of town. The $40,000 she owed came out of what little she would have gotten from the settlement, leaving her with almost nothing. She had to get a job for the first time in 15 years, working retail at a department store. Her friends, the ones who'd encouraged her to take me for everything, disappeared when they realized there was no money to be had. As for me, I kept the house. I got promoted at work a few months after the divorce finalized, which came with a significant raise. I started dating again, carefully, not rushing into anything. Emma lives with me full-time. She sees her mother every other weekend, but their relationship is strained. Emma knows what Sarah did, and forgiveness doesn't come easy at 14. Jake and Sophie, that's the part that still hurts. I see them sometimes when they're with Sarah. Jake's old enough to understand some of what happened, and he's angry with me, which I understand, even though it's not fair. He thinks I abandoned him. Sophie's too young to really get it. She just knows that she doesn't live with me anymore and doesn't understand why. I still pay the reduced child support for them, even though legally I could fight it harder now that their biological fathers have been established. But they're kids, and they didn't ask for any of this. That money goes into accounts I set up for their college funds. Sarah doesn't know about it, and I don't plan to tell her. The best revenge, I learned, isn't about destroying someone. It's about refusing to let them destroy you. Sarah tried to take everything from me, tried to make me pay for her mistakes, tried to use children as weapons in her war. But in the end, the truth came out. It always does.
I'm not going to lie and say everything is perfect now. Some days are hard. Some days I miss the family I thought I had, even though I know it was built on lies. But I'm free now, free from the manipulation, free from the constant wondering, free from living a lie. Sarah has to live with what she did. Every time she struggles to pay her bills, every time her kids ask why things changed, every time she sees me moving forward with my life, she has to face the consequences of her choices. That's not revenge, that's justice. And sometimes, justice is enough. Judge Chen's 3 words that day? Case dismissed. Goodbye, Mrs. Harrison. And I never looked back. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share this with someone who needs to hear that the truth always wins in the end. I want to know where you're watching from right now. Drop your country or city in the comments below. Let's see how far these stories reach. Are you watching from a quiet night in Texas? Maybe during your morning commute in Toronto? Or perhaps it's already tomorrow where you are in Manila. I love seeing this community grow across the world. A special shout out to our viewers from the United States, the Philippines, and Canada. You 3 make up the heart of this channel, and I see you in the comments every single day, sharing your own stories and supporting each other. You're the reason I keep doing this. Your stories matter, your experiences matter, and this community we're building together matters. So, comment below, let me know where you're from and if you've ever experienced something similar to Marcus's story. Sometimes just knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Until next time, remember, the truth might take time, but it never stays hidden forever.